Today I want to speak about ethical leadership. It is essential that we deal with this topic, especially during this time and season. What we see in our political life in this country is extremely disappointing when you think about ethical leadership. What we see and hear at Zondo Commission, the gory details that are very gross, clearly indicates that there is a severe failure of ethical leadership in our country. Therefore, it is timely that we talk about ethical leadership and talk openly and clearly and explain clearly so that everyone, especially young leaders, even old leaders, we need to understand that it is critical to have ethical leadership in this country so that this nation will not become a failed state and become a banana republic. And this is so important for the sustainability of this country and for the future of our children and grandchildren. So I just want to be very practical when I speak about ethical leadership today. 4 concepts that I'd like to talk about when it comes to ethical leadership. Number 1, responsibility. If you're an ethical leader, you take responsibility serious. You know that you need to be seen, heard, and be known as a responsible person. What do I mean by that? Particularly in the business context. It means you must run the business with due regard to the interest of all stakeholders. And I don't mean just shareholders only, I mean stakeholders. And let me just pause there and really reflect about this concept of shareholder and stakeholders. Clearly, it is totally fair, legitimate for the investors to expect a good return on their investment. No one is doubting that. No one is debating that. But to assume that the company is only designed to meet only the interest of the shareholders, that's a recipe for disaster. Because then you start pushing everything, including short-term decision, not long-term decision that build the sustainability of a company in order to push the share price, and in that way, only focus on the interest of one stakeholder, that is a shareholder. And when you go down that path, that's a path to disaster. We've seen that in Steinhoff. We've seen it in many companies that are chasing just one interest stakeholder, and that is a very important mistake that many people make. It's all stakeholders. Let me repeat again. All stakeholders. There we include the environment. We include community social responsibility. We include employees, suppliers, everyone who's got a stake in this enterprise, government. So responsibility is number 1. You need to be responsible to all shareholders and all stakeholders and everyone who's got a stake in this company. You need to be responsible for. And you need to run this company bearing everyone's interest. Number 2, in the area of responsibility, is comply with all applicable legal requirements. There is no doubt about that. If the law says this, you comply to it. Compliance is number 1 in running a government. No shortcuts, no ways and means of trying to avoid to comply. It doesn't work. If you realize you're not being able to comply, come clean to whoever the regulators. I spent all my working life in the oil and gas industry, in the energy sector. It's highly regulated, very, very regulated. But it was so important that you continuously engage the regulator making sure that you comply with all applicable laws and regulations. And that has helped me over the last 8 years. A third point I want to make around honesty is subscribe to corporate governance. Subscribe to corporate governance. Don't take shortcuts. Your board must be so clear about its roles and responsibilities. Each board member needs to know their duties, and they need to know their fiduciary responsibilities and the duty of care and the ability to execute their duties. And a board that is run in a way that is allowing dissent and diversity of opinion, not dominated by the chairman or whoever is maybe one independent or director or a shareholder director. It must be run properly. I don't want to spend too much time on Mervyn King has outlined that very, very clear in his King 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and maybe 5 is coming. So I'm not going to waste time on that, but I just want to make one point. Run your company in a very clear governance processes, followed to the T. So let me just repeat again. I said responsibility is a key concept of ethical leadership. Under responsibility, I mentioned that it is critical that you have the interest of all stakeholders. And number 2, I said it is critical that you need, under responsibility, to follow all applicable laws. Number 3, under the principle of responsibility, I said it is important that you run the company under absolutely clear and very, 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 very focused on governance processes and systems. Now, let's move on. The next real big concept around ethical leadership is honesty. Downright honesty. And this we learned at our homes. When you are young, you actually need to know your mom, your dad. They used to scold you. In our time, you get a very good spanking if you're not honest. I'll tell you a little bit of a story here because these, stories amplify these things. I've got a granddaughter, and my granddaughter, is growing now. She's 5 years old. She's starting to be a little bit smart. She thinks she's smarter than me because I'm a mkulu, And one day they were playing with their friends down in my gym, and then what happened there? They were running on a treadmill, and they messed it up. I don't know what they did, but it was out of order. Now, instead of coming and telling the truth that they have actually messed up with the treadmill, she organized all of them that they must not tell the truth. And then one of them tried to tell the truth, and she said, "Oh, no, don't tell the truth." And I kept on asking. They were all, ducking and diving, 5, 6 year old and 8, 9. And I looked at them, I knew that there's not something wrong there. But I, pretended as if, they've won the day. The following day, I called all of them. I asked them, "But what happened there?" And one of them decided to say, "No, Morunga doesn't want us to tell the truth." And they told the truth, and they spilled the beans, and they told everything. And as they were telling, and I was looking at her face, she was getting more and more ashamed and even more and more embarrassed. And as they were telling the truth, and I took out my belt and I said, "My granddaughter, I'm going to give you a spanking, not because you broke my treadmill, but because you do not want to tell the truth and you connive with other people not to tell the truth." And obviously I didn't give her a big spanking like we used to get. I said, just give me your hand. And I slapped her 3 times. And she was very embarrassed. And I made a point that she is embarrassed by that. So that it gets into the little brain that dishonesty is totally unacceptable. Because for me, it was a teaching moment that I would not miss at that age of the 5-year-old, to make sure that she understands at that moment that dishonesty is totally unacceptable. I'm glad about a week later, and I met her with her friends, and somebody had done something wrong. She came running to me. She said, Kulu, I want to tell you the truth. And she told me the truth and spilled the beans of the other people. But that's fine. The principle is now she knows that there is no way but to tell the truth. Because somehow, before that incident, somebody had probably put in her mind that if you tell the truth, you'll get into trouble. So tell a lie in order to avoid getting into trouble. And that's what happens. You tell a little lie, you tell a little lie, you tell a little lie to avoid getting into trouble. Before you know, you're living a life of lies. And I know business people, I know some of them, I work with them, who've become psychopathic liars. And they end up believing their lies. And that's sad. So, when we talk about honesty, we mean that you emphatically reject all forms of dishonesty. You do not tolerate dishonest acts, such as bribery, corruption, fraud, falsification, and misrepresentation, especially on your CV. Exaggerations, hyperbolic statements, all the things that are misrepresenting. And it's wrong. Another very important point I want to make under honesty is do not use your business position to obtain personal benefits. Let me repeat this. Do not use your business position, your powerful position, the powerful position that you have. You could be a CEO or a CFO, or you could be a general manager, you could be responsible for a business unit, and then you use that position for personal benefits. I'll give you an example because it's, sometimes it helps to amplify these things. For 30 years in my life, I have had the positional power to influence who gets a service station. I started to have that responsibility at Shell. At Excel, I had almost ultimate responsibility for it because I was responsible for retail and I became the CEO of Excel. So I had so much power and ability to influence who should get a service station. And we're building service stations left, right, and center. And every dealer, everyone wanted the service stations. And the same when we moved into Sasol, I was responsible for the retail business. And I had absolute power, positional power, to influence who should take a service station. In other words, selection of dealers, or what we call now franchisees. Now, if I didn't understand this principle, I promise you, it would have been so easy for me to know that the service station at the corner of Busy Corner is going to be coming in 6 months' time. It's going to be a very good one. And I know all the facts and figures around it. I know how profitable it's going to be. I could have easily called my brother, my aunt, my cousin, my sister, or my son-in-law and says, apply for that service station. Here's the information. Put a business plan. Come when you come and present there, and I will make sure you get that service station. But that would have been abuse of the positional power that I would have had. Over a period of 30 years, if I was doing that, probably the entire part of Radebe clan would be having a number of service stations by now. In fact, a lot of them came to me and says, but hey, man, uncle, can I get a service station? It's Sasol or Shell or Excel. And I would say, go through the process. And it's very important that you declare that you've got a relative here. But I'm not going to use my positional power to get you a service station. I'm happy to say that I can put my hand in my heart that I've never used that positional power to benefit any member of my family, or including myself, where I could have had shares in all the service stations and have people who are holding those shares for me as proxies. No! Refused to be tempted. It was extremely tempting. Because some of these service stations were lucrative, especially the highway sites, extremely profitable. It would have been so easy for me to have a proxy that holds shares for me in that. But because I understood this principle, that you will not use your positional power to obtain benefits for yourselves. So I want to urge you, and this is catching so much of our young political leaders. Some are young, they're coming up, and we're hopeful that they will come up and bring some fresh blood in the leadership, but they were caught by this one. Just doesn't understand that it is critical not to use your positional power for personal benefit. The third concept of ethical leadership is about fairness. Fairness is very important. I mean, you can be honest, but if you're unfair, it really removes everything that you do. You can be responsible, but if you're unfair, it just removes everything that you've achieved in the first two concepts that I spoke about. What is critical about fairness is to treat people as you like to be treated. You know, I've seen leaders who treat people like dirt, who treat especially lower level employees with disdain, with no respect, shout at them, scream at them, use even vulgar language in speaking to them, bully them. It's just downright unethical to treat people like that. And this is what is totally unaccepted. And I really think we need to be open and frank about this, because it is when you've got power, and it goes into your head, you just think other people are your doormats. It just cannot be. You need to be fair in the decisions that you make. You can't take unfair decisions, take advantage of people. No. Ethical leaders judge themselves with how fair they treat people, so that when they sleep at night, they can truly sleep peacefully, that I've taken the best decision. The same when you're taking business decisions. You cannot take them because of some irrational emotion. I don't like you. I don't like your face. I don't like your nose. I don't like your ears. That's just irrational. Or, you know what, you're coming from that area. I don't really like that. Emotional, some prejudices that we have, all of us have got them. You can't take decisions based on that. You have to take decisions based on a strategy if it's a business decision that has been agreed upon, policies that have been agreed on. If it's a pricing policy, there's a pricing policy that you use. You don't come up with your own pricing strategy that is wrong or inflated or profiteering because the advantage, you've got an advantage. No, you have to be ethical. Facts must help you make right decisions. Not some conspiracy theories, facts. And you must be able to prove that you've analyzed the situation and you've arrived with the best information available to you. You made a decision. And that is important in terms of fairness. Now, let's move to the last concept on ethical leadership, is respect. Downright simple respect. Respect of human beings. respect their human rights, respect their dignity. I mean, if an organization does not respect human rights, doesn't have its human rights charter, its own way of doing things and conduct, it just shows that there is no ethical leadership in that company. It's very important to have those things that are clearly enshrined in the human rights charter of the company, so that everybody knows, even the new people knows what rights they have and what obligations they have and what responsibility they have. And everyone is expecting to be treated with dignity. And it's important to treat all stakeholders with respect. And sometimes we don't treat employees with respect, or we don't treat suppliers with respect. Trust me, treat suppliers with respect. Because when you need them most, that is when it will be clear whether you had a respectful relationship and a mutually beneficial relationship. Because when the chips are down and you need them to come through for you, they will come through for you if you've been treating them with fairness and with respect. Finally, under the whole concept of respect, it's very important that discrimination in all its aspects does not exist in your company. If you're an ethical leader, you will be dead against any form of discrimination. And it could be race discrimination, total against it. Discrimination based on religion, totally against it. Gender discrimination is totally unacceptable. Gender based on sexual orientation, totally unacceptable. So it's very important that there is no form of discrimination, because everyone needs to feel welcomed, feel valued, feel embraced, and the whole environment must engender growth of somebody's potential. Every person, when they come into a workplace, we spend so much time in the workplace that we want to feel that we are embraced and our contribution is valued and our potential is unleashed. And that is what we're talking about. So in conclusion, I just want to repeat that ethical leadership is essential in our country. We are on a slippery slope to becoming a failed state if we do not stop and pause and raise leaders that are ethical and authentic. We are in for a real disastrous situation. I want to conclude by repeating what I said when I started. Ethical leadership has got 4 major concepts. Number 1, responsibility. You have to take responsibility. You need to be known as a responsible person. And it is critical that people respect you because you're responsible. Number 2, honesty. Simple honesty. Just being honest. Knowing that what you say and what you do and what you think is aligned. It's very important. And people need to know that you're honest with everything. You're honest with yourself, you're honest with them, and people will really respect you. And number 3, as an ethical leader, you need to be fair. Fairness is part of being an ethical leader. You need to be fair, you need to treat people fair, you need to take decisions that are fair, and if there's any conflict situation, people need to trust you that you will take a fair decision. There will be no favoritism, there will be no so irrational, emotional, and prejudices that drives your decision making. You will be a very, very fair leader that adds to your being perceived as an ethical leader. Finally, respect. Respect human beings, respect people that work with, even if they are high or low employees. Some people like to manage upwards and look very nice and be very nice to people who are above them in terms of rank, but be terrible with people who are below them. And treat them really like that. And stop that. Because you have to be respectful. And respect includes understanding that people have got rights and have got dignity. And therefore, I want to urge you to become an ethical leader. And I want to make sure that all of us, in all aspects of our leadership, and leadership is not only political leadership, leadership is leadership in all aspects of our society. Leadership in our schools, leadership in our homes, leadership in our communities, leadership in our places of worship. All those areas needs ethical leadership. Leadership in sport needs ethical leadership. And in this country, we need it more than ever before. And I charge everyone who's listening to this broadcast that you take it upon yourself that I am going to be an ethical leader. Thank you very much.